When blood started seeping through my chest, I realized it wasn't the physical wound that was killing me. It was my mother's smile when I begged to call 911. They protected my sister down to the bone, even when it was my bones that were broken. And they would keep doing it, even if I died right in front of them. My name is Emma Fitzgerald, and I'm 29 years old. As I sit here in my new apartment, surrounded by boxes and the quiet hum of a life I'm finally building on my own terms, I can still feel the phantom pain in my ribs. 2 months have passed since that Christmas dinner when everything shattered, not just my bones, but the last illusions I held about my family. I work as an architect at Sterling Design Group in New York. Though I recently transferred to their Connecticut office, it was supposed to be a homecoming. A chance to be closer to my family in New Haven after years of keeping them at arm's length. Looking back, I should have trusted my instincts. Distance wasn't just geographical, it was survival. The Fitzgerald family looked perfect from the outside. My father, Michael, was a successful lawyer with his name on the letterhead of one of Connecticut's most prestigious firms. My mother, Diana, had transformed from a ballet teacher into a charity organizer who could work a room like nobody's business. My younger brother, Owen, at 21, was the baby a pre-med student who somehow managed to float above the family dysfunction like oil on water. And then there was Sophia, 2 years older than me. Sophia had been the golden child since the day she first stepped onto a track. I remember being 7 years old, watching from the bleachers as she broke the state record for her age group in the 400-meter dash. The way our parents looked at her that day like she was the sun itself was something I'd spend the next 2 decades trying to earn for myself. But here's what nobody talks about when they discuss golden children: sometimes that gold is just a thin veneer over something much darker. The first time Sophia hurt me, I was 8. We were arguing over who got to use the good colored pencils for our homework. She'd already broken half of mine, pressing too hard in one of her frequent fits of frustration. When I tried to take the box back, she shoved me. Not a little push between siblings, a full-force shove that sent me face first into the corner of our kitchen table. I lost 2 baby teeth that day, when my parents came home to find me holding a bloody towel to my mouth. Sophia spun a story about how I tripped while running in the house. My mother believed her instantly. "You know you're not supposed to run inside, Emma," she'd said, examining my mouth with the clinical detachment of someone checking a car for dents. "Sophia has a big meet tomorrow. She doesn't need this kind of drama." That became the pattern. Sophia's meets, Sophia's stress, Sophia's future, these were the holy trinity in our household. Every time she lashed out, there was an excuse ready. She was under pressure. She was tired from training. She needed our support, not our criticism. By the time I was in middle school, I'd learned to navigate around my sister like she was a minefield. I knew which topics would set her off any achievement of mine, which times were most dangerous right before competitions, and which rooms to avoid anywhere our parents weren't directly supervising. Not that their supervision helped much. The day Sophia tore up my essay, the one I'd spent 3 weeks perfecting for the state writing competition, our parents were in the next room. I can still hear the sound of paper ripping, see the satisfied smirk on her face as she let the pieces flutter to the floor like snow. "It was an accident," she'd said when our parents rushed in. "I was trying to move it, and it just tore." My mother had looked at me with that expression I'd come to know so well, a mixture of disappointment and exhaustion, as if my very existence was just one more thing she had to manage. "You should have put it somewhere safer," she'd said. "You know Sophia's been stressed about regionals." I rewrote that essay in one night, submitting something far inferior to the original. I didn't place in the competition. Sophia won her regionals. Guess which event our family celebrated? High school brought new dimensions to Sophia's cruelty and our parents' blindness. She'd perfected the art of psychological warfare by then. Little comments designed to cut deep, always delivered with a smile when our parents were just within earshot but not quite paying attention. "Cute dress, Emma," she'd say, her tone suggesting anything but approval. I guess not everyone can pull off athletic wear. "Did you make the honor roll again? Mom and Dad must be so relieved one of us is good at sitting still." "I saw Ben looking at you today. Don't get your hopes up, he asked me about you, but not in the way you think." Each barb was carefully calculated, designed to hurt without leaving evidence. And when I'd finally snap back, she'd widen her eyes in mock hurt. And suddenly, I was the aggressor, the difficult one, the sister who couldn't just be supportive. Our parents' bias wasn't subtle. Sophia's trophies lined the mantel, the hallways, even the kitchen. My academic awards were relegated to a single shelf in my bedroom. When Sophia got recruited by college scouts, we threw a party that lasted all weekend. When I got into Columbia's architecture program, my mother's response was, "That's nice, dear. Will you be able to come home for Sophia's meets?" I escaped to New York like a refugee fleeing a war zone. Those first few months at Columbia were revelatory. I met Naomi Parker in my freshman seminar, a girl from Chicago who laughed loudly, argued passionately, and treated me like my thoughts mattered. When I tentatively shared an idea in class, she didn't dismiss it or one-up me. She listened, built on it, made me feel smart. "You're brilliant. You know that," she'd said one night over coffee and study notes. "The way you see space and structure, it's like you're speaking a language the rest of us are still learning." I'd actually started crying. It was the first time in years someone had praised my intelligence without immediately following it up with a comparison to someone else. Luis came into my life junior year. He was in the engineering program, with a smile that could light up a room and a habit of bringing me tea during late-night study sessions. Our relationship was easy in a way I hadn't known was possible. He never made me feel like I was too much or not enough. With him, I was just Emma. And somehow that was plenty. "Your family sounds intense," he'd said after I'd shared some carefully edited stories about growing up. "But you know that's about them, not you, right?" I'd nodded, but I hadn't really believed it. Not yet. Senior year brought news from home that Sophia's carefully constructed world was beginning to crack. She'd lost her athletic scholarship after a series of injuries and what my mother delicately referred to as performance issues. The real story, which I pieced together from Owen's carefully neutral texts, involved partying, missed practices, and a coach who'd finally had enough. She moved back home, and suddenly the family narrative had to shift. Sophia wasn't a failed athlete, she was exploring her options. She wasn't unemployed, she was taking time to find the right fit. The mental gymnastics my parents performed to maintain their image of their golden child would have been impressive if they weren't so destructive. Meanwhile, I graduated summa cum laude, landed a position at one of New York's most innovative architecture firms, and began building a life that felt like mine. I had work I loved, friends who valued me, and a relationship that, while it ultimately didn't work out, taught me what mutual respect looked like. Luis and I parted ways amicably after 2 years. He'd gotten an incredible job offer in Seattle, and we both knew our relationship wasn't at the moving across the country stage. But we remained friends, the kind who check in on birthdays and major life events, who genuinely want good things for each other. "You're going to do amazing things, Emma," he'd said at our goodbye dinner. "Just promise me you won't let anyone make you forget how incredible you are." I'd promised. But promises are easier to make when you're 3,000 miles from the people who taught you to doubt yourself. The trouble started when Sterling Design Group offered me a promotion that came with a transfer to their Connecticut office. It was a huge opportunity heading up their new sustainable architecture division, working with clients I'd only dreamed about, making the kind of impact I'd always wanted to make. "You'll be closer to family," my mother had said when I'd called with the news, her voice bright with an enthusiasm that should have been my first warning. "Sophia will be so happy. She's been having such a hard time, and having her sister nearby will mean the world to her." Even then, even after years of distance and therapy and building my own life, that ingrained need to help, to fix, to be the good daughter, kicked in. Maybe, I thought, things could be different now. We were adults. Sophia had been humbled by her failures. Our parents had perhaps learned to see us both more clearly. I should have known better. Trauma patterns don't just disappear because you change your zip code. The first Sunday dinner after my move back was like stepping through a time warp. The same dining room, the same seats, the same dynamics. Sophia, now 31, had gained weight and lost the athletic glow that had once made her untouchable in our parents' eyes. But instead of humanizing her, it had made her meaner. "Look who decided to grace us with her presence," she'd said as I walked in, her voice carrying that familiar edge. "The big shot architect. Tell me, do they teach you how to look down on people in those fancy schools, or does that come naturally?" "Sophia," our mother had said. But it was the same token protest I remembered from childhood, more about form than any real correction. I'd taken my usual seat. Yes. We still had assigned seats at 31 and 29 and tried to steer the conversation toward neutral ground. But every topic seemed to circle back to Sophia's struggles and, somehow, my culpability in them. "It must be nice," Sophia said over dessert, "to have everything come so easily. Some of us actually had to work for our achievements." The irony of this statement coming from someone who'd been handed every opportunity while I'd fought for scraps of approval was so rich I almost choked on my pie. But I swallowed my response along with the dessert, the way I always had. Now, my father had interjected, in that tone that suggested he was being magnanimous by acknowledging any conflict at all. "Emma's worked hard too. Not everyone can be an athlete." Even his defense was a dig, a reminder of the hierarchy that had always existed in our family. Sophia's achievements were the real ones. Mine were consolation prizes. The Sunday dinners continued, each one a masterclass in emotional manipulation. Sophia had developed new tactics in our years apart. She'd learned to weaponize her failures, turning them into evidence of how unfair life had been to her, how lucky I was in comparison. "You wouldn't understand," became her refrain. "You've never had to struggle. Everything just falls into your lap." My mother would nod sympathetically, apparently having forgotten the nights I'd stayed up studying until dawn, the scholarships I'd earned, the unpaid internships I'd worked while Sophia's every need was catered to. History, it seemed, was constantly being rewritten to suit the current narrative. The gaslighting was so consistent, so pervasive, that I started to doubt my own memories. Had I really worked that hard, or had things come easily to me? Was I being ungrateful, not recognizing my privileges? I'd call Naomi after particularly bad dinners, needing someone to reality check me. "Emma, stop," she'd say firmly. "I was there. I saw you nearly kill yourself for that degree. I watched you work 3 jobs to afford your apartment. Your family's full of shit, and you know it." But knowing something intellectually and believing it emotionally are two different things. The little girl who'd lost her baby teeth and been told she was clumsy, who'd had her essay destroyed and been blamed for not protecting it better, she was still in there, still wondering if maybe she was the problem. Work became my refuge. At Sterling, I was respected, valued, my ideas mattered. The Sustainable Architecture Division was thriving under my leadership. We'd landed major contracts, were pioneering new techniques that were getting attention from industry publications. I was the youngest person to ever head a division in the company's history. None of this registered as significant to my family. Sophia's latest scheme, UIG, planned to start an online fitness coaching business despite having no certifications or business experience, was treated with more seriousness than my actual, measurable achievements. "You should help your sister with her website," my mother suggested one Sunday. "You work with computers, don't you?" "I'm an architect, Mom. I design buildings." "Well, it's all technical stuff, isn't it? Family helps family, Emma." But family helping family only ever went one direction in the Fitzgerald household. The breaking point came, as I mentioned, at Christmas dinner. I'd been rehearsing my announcement for weeks. Sterling had chosen me to lead the design team for a new sustainable housing development, a $50 million project that would provide affordable, eco-friendly homes for hundreds of families. It was the kind of project architects dream about, the kind that actually makes a difference in the world. I'd planned to share the news after dinner, when everyone was relaxed and happy from good food and wine. But as we sat down to eat, my mother clinked her glass for attention. "Before we start," she said, beaming at Sophia, "we have some wonderful news to share. Sophia's been accepted into an online business program. Isn't that wonderful?" The table erupted in congratulations. My father opened champagne, actual champagne, which he'd never done for any of my achievements. Owen, ever the diplomat, offered a toast to new beginnings. I sat there, my own news dying in my throat, and watched my family celebrate what I was fairly certain was another of Sophia's fabrications. It's very exclusive, Sophia was saying, basking in the attention. They only accept a small percentage of applicants, but they recognized my potential, my unique perspective from my athletic background. Something in me snapped. Maybe it was the champagne for her fake achievement while my real ones went uncelebrated. Maybe it was the way she'd said unique perspective, as if failing at one career somehow qualified you for another. Or maybe it was just 29 years of accumulated slights finally reaching critical mass. Which program? I heard myself asking. What's it called? Sophia's eyes flashed. Why? So you can look it up and judge whether it meets your standards. No, I'm genuinely curious. Is it accredited? What's the curriculum like? Not everyone needs traditional accreditation. My mother jumped in. Sophia's taking an unconventional path, and we support her. Of course you do, I muttered, the words slipping out before I could stop them. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. What's that supposed to mean? Sophia demanded. I should have backed down, should have mumbled an apology and gone back to playing my role, but I'd had just enough wine to loosen my tongue and just enough accumulated frustration to fuel it. Nothing. I'm sure your online business program is great, very exclusive. You know what your problem is. Sophia stood up, her face flushing. You've always been jealous, always trying to make everything about you. I haven't said a word about myself all evening, because everything you do is designed to make the rest of us feel inferior. Your fancy job, your degrees, your perfect little life in New York. That I built myself without any help. Without any help, Sophia laughed, ugly and sharp. Mom and Dad paid for everything. They paid for your training camps, your equipment, your coaches, your tutors when you were failing classes because all you cared about was running. At least I had talent, real talent, not just the ability to sit at a desk and draw pictures. Enough, my father roared, but he was looking at me. Emma, you're ruining Christmas. That's when I made my fatal error. In my anger, my frustration, my desperate need to be seen. I reached into my purse and pulled out the folded paper I'd been carrying. The rejection letter from the online program, the one I'd found in Sophia's room when I'd gone up to use the bathroom earlier. She's lying, I said, unfolding it. She didn't get accepted, she got rejected. Just like she's been rejected from every job she's applied to, every program she's tried to join. And you all just keep enabling her, keep pretending. I never saw the wine bottle coming. Sophia moved faster than I'd have thought possible, grabbing the heavy crystal decanter from the table and swinging it at my head. I managed to duck, but she was already reaching for something else, the decorative glass sculpture my mother kept as a centerpiece, all sharp angles and artistic pretension. Sophia! Stop! My mother cried, but she didn't move from her chair. Neither did my father. They watched, frozen, as their golden child came at me with violence in her eyes. I tried to get away, but Sophia had always been stronger. She grabbed my hair, yanking me back, and then brought the sculpture down on my chest with all her strength. The pain was immediate and blinding. I heard something crack, felt it, a sharp, wrong sensation inside my body. I dropped to my knees, gasping, and that's when I tasted blood. Get up, Sophia snarled. Stop being so dramatic. I couldn't get up, couldn't breathe properly. Each inhale felt like knives scraping against broken things inside me. Blood was pooling in my mouth, dripping onto my mother's pristine white carpet. Mom, I wheezed. Hospital, please. My mother stood up then, finally. But instead of reaching for the phone, she reached for napkins. Let's not overreact, she said, trying to dab at the blood on the carpet. Sophia didn't mean it. You provoked her, bringing up that letter. You know how sensitive she is? I'm bleeding internally. I managed to say, I need an ambulance. That's when she smiled. Not a big smile, not obvious, but that small, tight expression I'd seen 1,000 times before. The smile that said I was being difficult, making a fuss, causing problems. "Don't be ridiculous," she said. "And don't even think about calling the police. Do you want to ruin your sister's life? She's already struggling enough without a record." She broke my ribs. "You don't know that. You're being hysterical. Sophia, apologize to your sister." "Sorry you can't take a joke," Sophia said, but she'd backed away, maybe finally realizing she'd gone too far. I looked at my father, still in his chair, swirling his wine, at Owen, pressed against the wall, eyes wide but silent, at my mother, more concerned about her carpet than her daughter's blood. That's when I understood, really, truly understood. They would let me die on that dining room floor before they'd ever hold Sophia accountable. I don't remember making the decision to leave. One moment I was on my knees. The next I was stumbling toward the door, car keys clutched in my bloody hand. My mother called after me about not making a scene. My father muttered something about drama, but I kept moving. The drive to the hospital was a blur of pain and determination. Each turn of the wheel sent agony through my chest. I could barely see through the tears, but I made it, stumbling into the ER looking like a horror movie extra. "Domestic violence," the intake nurse asked quietly, professionally, as if she'd seen this 100 times before. I hesitated. Even then, even with broken ribs and blood in my mouth, I hesitated. "Yes," I finally whispered. "My sister." The X-rays confirmed what my body already knew: 2 broken ribs, one dangerously close to puncturing my lung. The doctor, a kind woman with gentle hands, documented every bruise, every cut. The nurses moved around me with practiced efficiency. But I caught the looks they exchanged. They'd seen this before, too. "There's a social worker who can talk to you about your options." One nurse, Jocelyn, said softly, "You don't have to go back there." "It's my family," I said, as if that explained everything, as if that excused everything. "Honey," she said, and her voice carried the weight of too much experience. "Family doesn't do this to each other." I called Naomi from the hospital bed. She was there within an hour, despite it being Christmas night, despite the snow, despite everything. She took one look at me and burst into tears. "I'm calling the police," she said. "No, I need somewhere to stay." "Emma, please, not tonight. I can't do it tonight." She held my hand while they finished treating me, drove me to her apartment in silence. It wasn't until we were inside, until I was wrapped in blankets on her couch with tea, I couldn't drink because it hurt to swallow, that she spoke again. "You know this is attempted murder, right? She could have killed you." "She's my sister." "No," Naomi said firmly. "She's your abuser, has been for years. Your whole family, they're all complicit." My phone had been buzzing nonstop. Messages from my mother, my father, even Owen. I finally looked at them, expecting apologies, concern, something. "You've ruined Christmas. I hope you're happy." "Mom." "Your sister is distraught. This is what happens when you push people too far." "Dad." "Maybe give everyone some space to cool down." Owen. Not one message asking if I was okay. Not one expression of concern for my well-being. The narrative had already been written. I was the villain who had provoked poor, struggling Sophia into a justified response. I turned off my phone. The next few days passed in a haze of pain medication and hard truths. Luis somehow heard what happened. Naomi might have called him, and he flew in from Seattle. Seeing him in Naomi's living room, looking at me with such concern and carefully controlled anger, made everything real in a way it hadn't been before. "This isn't okay," he said simply. "You know this isn't okay, right?" "I know," I said, and for the first time, I meant it. He stayed for 3 days, helping Naomi take care of me, making plans. Between the two of them, they created a safety net I didn't know I needed. Luis called a lawyer friend. Naomi researched trauma therapists. They tag-teamed my protests, gently but firmly pushing me toward what they saw clearly, and I was only beginning to accept I needed help. And I needed out. Dr. Moore was nothing like I'd expected a therapist to be. She was young, with purple streaks in her hair and a no-nonsense approach that cut through my lifetime of conditioning. "Let me make sure I understand," she said in our first session. "Your sister physically assaulted you, broke your ribs, could have punctured your lung, and your parents' response was to worry about her potential criminal record. When you put it like that, it sounds bad. It sounds bad because it is bad. Extremely bad. Criminally bad. But they're my family. Family is supposed to protect you, not enable your attempted murder." The word murder hit like another blow to the chest. But she was right. If that rib had shifted differently, if the lung had been punctured, if I hadn't made it to the hospital, "They would have let me die," I said, the words coming out in a whisper. "From what you've described, yes, they would have chosen protecting your sister over saving your life." The truth of it was devastating, but also, strangely, freeing. If they could choose Sophia over my life, then I could choose myself over their comfort. Recovery wasn't just physical. As my ribs healed, I began the harder work of untangling the psychological mess my family had made of me. Dr. Moore helped me see the patterns I'd been blind to, the gaslighting, the scapegoating, the way I'd been trained from childhood to accept abuse as love. "You were the family sin eater," she explained. "Everything wrong, everything that went bad, it was always your fault. That way, they never had to look at their own dysfunction." I started documenting everything. The text messages that kept coming, oscillating between guilt trips and rage. The voicemails from my mother, tearfully explaining how I was tearing the family apart. The email from my father, threatening legal action if I spread lies about what happened. "Keep all of it," the lawyer Luis had connected me with advised. "This is evidence of a pattern of abuse and intimidation." 3 weeks after Christmas, I made a decision. I called my parents and asked for a meeting. Just them and Sophia. Owen was back at school. And honestly, he'd always been more bystander than participant. I told them I'd come to the house, that we needed to talk about what happened. "Oh, good," my mother had said, relief evident in her voice. "I knew you'd come to your senses. Family works these things out together." I brought Naomi with me. Also, the medical records, the photos of my injuries, the documentation of their messages, and a clear, simple request: Sophia gets professional help for her violence. Or I file charges. The meeting went about as well as you'd expect. "This is blackmail," my father said, not even looking at the medical records I'd placed on the table. "It's accountability," I replied. "I don't need help," Sophia spat. "You're the one who needs help, coming here with your little friend, trying to intimidate us." "I'm trying to save your life," I said, looking directly at her. "Because next time, and there will be a next time, you might actually kill someone, and they might not be as reluctant as I am to press charges." "Get out," my mother said coldly. "Get out of our house. You're no daughter of mine." "I haven't been your daughter for a long time," I said, gathering my papers. "I've been Sophia's punching bag and your excuse maker. I'm done with both roles." "If you go to the police," my father started, "then what you'll disown me, disinherit me news, flash you did that years ago. I have nothing left to lose here." "You'll destroy our reputation," my mother said. And there it was, the real concern. Not my well-being, not Sophia's obvious need for help, but what the neighbors would think. "Your reputation isn't my responsibility," I said. "It never should have been." I walked out of that house for the last time with my head high and Naomi's hand on my back. Behind us, I could hear Sophia screaming, throwing things, my parents trying to calm her down. The same scene that had played out 100 times, just without me as the target. I filed the police report that afternoon. The aftermath was swift and predictable. My family closed ranks, hiring lawyers, crafting a narrative where I was the unstable one, the jealous sister who'd fabricated injuries. But I had documentation, medical records, a history of reports from teachers who'd noticed bruises, friends who'd witnessed Sophia's jokes that went too far. The district attorney decided to pursue charges. Assault in the 2nd degree. Sophia was arrested at the house, in front of the neighbors my mother so worried about. The local paper picked up the story. Local woman charged with assaulting sister at family dinner. My phone exploded with messages from extended family, friends, people I hadn't heard from in years. Some supportive, many not. Aunt Helen called me a traitor. My mother's best friend sent a long email about forgiveness and family loyalty. My high school guidance counselor reached out to say she'd always worried about me, had seen the signs but hadn't known how to help. But for every critical message, there was a supportive one. Colleagues who'd noticed I was always tense after family dinners. College friends who remembered stories I'd told, half joking, about my crazy sister. Even Owen, finally, sending a single text. "I'm sorry I never stood up for you. You didn't deserve any of it." The legal process ground on. Depositions, hearings, plea bargains. Sophia eventually pled down to a misdemeanor assault charge, getting probation and mandatory anger management instead of jail time. My parents paid for the best lawyers, of course. But the damage to their reputation was done. My mother stepped down from 2 charity boards. My father's law firm suggested he take a less visible role. And me, I thrived. Without the constant weight of their judgment, their manipulation, their violence, I felt like I could breathe for the first time in my life. My work improved. The Sustainable Housing Project won industry awards. I was promoted again, this time to partner. I bought a beautiful apartment in a converted factory, all exposed brick and soaring windows, a space that was entirely mine. Dr. Moore helped me understand that healing isn't linear. Some days, I'd feel guilty for destroying my family. Other days, I'd rage at them for all the years they stole from me. Most days, I just felt free. "You didn't destroy anything," she reminded me during one particularly difficult session. "You revealed what was already broken." I built a new family, one based on mutual respect and genuine love. Naomi, who'd stood by me through the worst of it. Luis, who'd flown across the country to make sure I was okay, and who, over time and many long conversations, became more than just a supportive ex. My colleagues, who celebrated my achievements without qualification. New friends who knew me as Emma the architect, Emma the survivor, Emma the woman who refused to be silenced. 6 months after that Christmas, Luis and I were having dinner at my new place. We'd been taking things slow, rebuilding our connection on a foundation of who we'd both become rather than who we'd been. He was looking at the plans I'd drawn up for a community center, asking thoughtful questions when my phone rang. Unknown number, but local area code. Against my better judgment, I answered, "Emma." It was my mother's voice, smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Sophia's in the hospital. She attacked someone at a bar. The woman pressed charges, real charges. She's going to jail." I waited for her to continue, but the silence stretched on. "I'm sorry to hear that," I finally said, meaning it. Despite everything, I didn't want Sophia in jail. I wanted her to get help. "We need you to..." "No. You don't even know what I was going to ask. You were going to ask me to talk to the woman, to make this go away, to help Sophia somehow. The answer is no. She's your sister. She was my sister when she broke my ribs too. That didn't seem to matter then. Emma, please. We're sorry. We handled things badly. We see that now. They saw it now because there were consequences they couldn't buy their way out of. They saw it now because Sophia had finally attacked someone who wouldn't protect them from the truth. I hope Sophia gets the help she needs," I said. "I hope you all do, but I can't be part of it anymore." "You're really going to abandon your family?" "I'm choosing the family that chose me," I said, looking at Luis, who'd moved closer, his hand on my shoulder. "Goodbye, Mom." I hung up and blocked the number. That was a year ago. I hear things sometimes, through the grapevine. Sophia did go to jail, briefly, then a treatment facility. My parents sold the house, downsized. Became different people, quieter, more subdued. Owen graduated, moved to Chicago for his residency. Calls me sometimes to awkwardly try to build something new. "I think about it a lot," he said in our last conversation. "How we all just Let it happen. How we made you the bad guy for finally saying enough. We were kids, I told him, and I meant it. You were the youngest. It wasn't your job to protect me. It wasn't your job to absorb all of Sophia's anger either, or Mom and Dad's disappointment. But you did it anyway. He was right. I'd carried their burdens for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to walk without that weight. But I was learning. Every day, I was learning. As I finish writing this story, I'm sitting in my office at Sterling, looking out at the city I've helped build. The sustainable housing project broke ground last month. In a year, families will be living in homes I designed, spaces that nurture rather than diminish, that protect rather than expose. Luis just texted dinner plans for tonight. Naomi's coming too, along with her new girlfriend. We'll laugh, share our days, celebrate each other's victories without qualification or comparison. It's a simple thing. Being seen and valued for who you are. It shouldn't be revolutionary, but for me, it is. My ribs healed months ago, but sometimes I still feel them phantom pains when I laugh too hard or reach too far. Dr. Moore says it's my body remembering, staying vigilant. I don't mind it. Those healed bones are proof of what I survived, of what I walked away from, of what I refused to accept any longer. They're proof that I chose myself, finally and completely. And that choice, painful as it was, saved my life in more ways than one. The Fitzgeralds might have been the family I was born into, but they're not the family I choose, not anymore. And that's not a tragedy, it's a liberation. Some bonds are meant to be broken, some patterns are meant to be shattered, some stories are meant to end so that better ones can begin. This is where mine truly started, not with violence and blood and broken ribs, but with the quiet moment after. When I drove myself to safety and chose to stay there. When I stopped going back to the people who hurt me, stopped making excuses for their cruelty, stopped believing that their love was worth the price they demanded. Real love doesn't come with a cost so high it breaks your bones. Real family doesn't require you to bleed for belonging. And real freedom. It starts the moment you realize you deserve better and decide to go find it. I found it, and I'm never giving it back.